President Bola Tinubu, in fidelity to the pledge to put Nigerians at the center of government policies, has signed the following executive orders. Executive Order 1. The Finance Act, Effective Date Variation Order 2023, has now deferred the commencement date of the changes contained in the Act from May 28, 2023 to September 1, 2023. This is to ensure adherence to the 90 days minimum advance notice for tax changes as contained in the 2017 National Tax Policy. Executive Order 2, the Customs Excise Tariff Variation Amendment Order 2023. This has also shifted the commencement date of the tax changes from March 27, 2023 to August 1, 2023, and also in line with the National Tax Policy. Order 3. The President has given an order suspending the 5% tax on telecommunication services as well as the excise duties escalation on locally manufactured goods. 4. Further to his commitment to creating a business-friendly environment, the President has ordered the suspension of the newly introduced green tax by way of excise tax on single-use plastics, including plastic containers and bottles. In addition, the President has ordered the suspension of import tax adjustment levy on certain categories of vehicles. Like I said earlier, any vehicle of 2,000 capacity, engine capacity and above, which the tax was imposed upon, has now been suspended.
All right, welcome back. Those two gentlemen are joining us this morning to give us their perspective of what they make of that particular announcement, as you heard from Mr. Alake. So, Mr. Gbenga Adebayo is the chairman, Association of Licensed Telecoms Operators of Nigeria, Alton. He joins us virtually. We also do have Biola Sani, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria and the professor of commercial law, specialty in tax law, University of Lagos. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program today. Prof.
Good morning.
Prof, let's start off with you. I mean, yes, there's always been that talk about us doing something about tax. And I know that the president, while contesting, did speak about not increasing the tax burden, expanding the tax net, and several other reforms which they planned to do. But with this particular announcement, which moved it, suspended it to September 1, what do you make of it?
Thank you very much. The president not only spoke in his campaign programs, his manifesto and all that, he also spoke during his inaugurations about what he will do and what he will not do. And he promised that he will do something conscious and deliberate about multiple taxation. So what we have seen in action, in my view, is a kind of damage control to arrest a very bad situation. So this is a time where those who drafted the Finance Act may not have any insight into what will be happening at this time. So now there is a deregulation of fuel prices, there is unification of forex exchange rates, and we can see the impact on the economy and the common man. So this is a demonstration of political will from the highest level, in my view, to arrest the drift. So, and I thank the president for coming through for the stakeholders. And I also want to congratulate the stakeholders for being dogged. So I think it's a step in the right direction. But you must note that this is not only about suspension, it's also about postponement of commencement date, because the enforcement or in the implementation of the Finance Act and the variation order are already problematic. Even those who should implement them were not aware of their existence until they surface on the social media spaces. So thank you.
For when you say that, yes, it's not just a suspension, but postponement of the commencement date, but there are several others who think, well, yes, that may be the case, but they would like to see that completely taken out, because to them, they think it amounts to multiple taxation, that we already have a lot of tax burden. So not just suspending or postponing, it should just be, that announcement should have been, for them, complete, just take it off completely, and then it makes more meaning and sense to them.
Well, you should bear in mind that we are yet to see the executive orders. So until we see the content, but from the snippets we have seen on the media, there is a postponement of the commencement date, one of two laws. The first is the Finance Act to 1st of September. The second one is excise duties variation order to 1st of August. While stakeholders may actually clamor for their total abolition. So I think what we have now offers some reprieve. Bear in mind that this is a new administration that is just settling. There is no Minister of Finance in place. I think this is a measure or a strategy to buy time, to consult and see what they can do. So I think it's a half measure that gives some relief. There are aspects of it that should be totally thrown away. You know, I am not a fan of the excise on telecom, because clearly that is double taxation. But the aspect of green tax offers some promise. But the issue is, how do we go about it? I don't think we have set the best foot forward in this regard. So it seems the focus is on revenue, and that is not how green or environmental taxes work. You know, because they use a combination of stick and carrot. You encourage stakeholders, businesses, households to embrace environmentally friendly activities and actions, while you also punish those who are polluting the environment and those who are actually reversing the gains in that space. So I don't think at this time in point, we can expect a holistic abolition. Ultimately, it may lead to that after the new administration have taken time to actually understand what is on ground, because this is an inherent problem.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Adebayo on this one, because that tax component, of course, it will be interpreted differently. But while you tell us what the sector thinks about this, could you also tell us what it means for the telecom subscriber here? Because, of course, you know, many of them want to see some sort of cut, and they think that this might just be a window to that demand of theirs to ensure improved services and in terms of the ability to use a lot more data at cheaper cost. So go ahead. What does this mean for that sector?
Thank you. We also, as an industry, welcome the suspension of the excise tax on telecom services. I must also add that we join in commending Mr. President for this kind consideration. But it goes to say that on record, the previous administration, former Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, had actually made a case to the past president asking for exemption of the telecom sector from that tax. And we have on record that an approval was granted to that effect. So our sector was actually exempted from that tax. So, but when the new administration came in, we started hearing about it again. So what the executive order that the president signed yesterday has done is to uphold the waiver that was granted to the sector. That being said, we had said earlier, and among other things, that the burden of collection of the 5% is that tax will be on the telecom operators, but the weight of the tax itself will be on the subscribers. Because we had said to government that we currently apply 7.5% VAT on every services offered. If the 5% tax is introduced, it will go to 12.75, and that will have implication on the cost of service delivery to end users. So as an industry, we welcome it, but really and truly, it will have been a burden on the subscribers. And we also think that it will increase the cost of services. We think that it will deny access to many people. In this regard, we think the suspension is good, But we feel that a total abolition of this will be in the best interest of the industry and the subscribers. We say so because as a sector, we face over 39 taxes and levies across the country. Some of them are captured in the statute, a number of them are not captured in any statute. Quite a number of them are repeated at federal and state levels, and it increases costs of providing services to the end users. A number of them are also passed on to the subscribers. So when we talk about the issue of high cost of service provision or high end user prices, it's actually part of the components of the pricing. It's the issue of multiple taxation on the services that we provide. So we do welcome this, but we think for greater good, government should consider the total abolition of that 5% excise tax. And also, further to that is that there's a need to address this issue of multiple taxation that we face as an industry. We think it is not sustainable. We think it is contrary to the will of progress. And as Mr. President has promised that we will look at all issues of multiple taxation, we think that our sector should be one of those sectors where issues of the taxes that we face, over 39 of them across the country, should be addressed.
Okay, Professor Sani, this matter of the executive orders, yes, indeed, multiple reactions from different quarters as regards the impact it will have on the people and the economy. But then if we do remember, the conversation even before now had been that taxes were going to go up because the nation needs to generate income. Nigeria's debt profile is up there, and it's scary to some economists who had looked at it and examined it, and they think that taxes will help make a difference. Now, with this executive order, as you said, we've not really seen that executive order to get the breakdown of it. Would it not impede the revenue generation drive of this administration, seeing that there's so much to do with little or nothing to work with?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a clear demonstration of proper understanding of how to generate or how not to generate. Government is looking for new money, no doubt, but if we do not approach it the right way, it's going to be counterproductive. And this is why we must give kudos to a new administration who recognize that despite the parlous state of the economy, despite this desperate need for revenue, there is a way we will not go about it. And this is a window for them to look at it, look at the numbers, look at the advocacy, and then begin to understand it, disaggregate them, and then come to a firm decision. So clearly, references were made to the national tax policy, and I find that very exciting because the national tax policy is like the Chapter 2 of the Constitution relating to the taxation space. A commitment is already made by government on what they will do and what they will not do. And the president said clearly that he will address the problem of double taxation. And this is not the first time he has said that. Okay, but he has now backed it up with demonstration of political will by doing something. So I believe if we tax right, we will get even more money on sustainable basis. The tax policy that references were made to already pointed to how this can be achieved. And this will be achieved when you have a wholesome reform. Without a reform of the system, telecom will be in problem. The scenario is even worse in some other sector. So, and we keep talking about multiplicity of taxes. This is perhaps the first time that we are doing something conscious about it from the top. And I want the president to follow that through and also deal with multiple layers of income taxes at the federal, and they are growing. And if you look at the Finance Act, there is a new dimension that we have never seen before. So there is a levy on importation from outside Africa to finance financial commitment of some international organizations by Nigeria. This is not a sustainable way to go, and it's very worrisome. So nothing short of a holistic approach can actually deliver the much needed reform.
Prof, when you talk about holistic approach, yes, you mentioned the multiple levels of taxes that there are. Meanwhile, there are some other areas that are not even taxed enough, so to speak. For instance, the area of housing tax. There are those who argue that if we look at the amount of houses as they are and begin to tax them, that might reduce a lot of weight on or reduce the level of taxes that are placed on other areas of the economy. So let's look at that holistic approach to taxation that you talked about. To gain an inroad, where should we even be looking to start?
To housing tax? Is that what you said, Newton?
Mentioned housing tax as one area that some have argued that should be looked at in terms of raising the tax revenue or raising revenue.
You mean
from
property tax?
Property tax, so to speak, yes.
Okay.
But I was saying that in a holistic, when you talk about holistic approach to taxing, to raising revenue through taxes, where should the inroad be?
If you do not have a structured economy or system where each level of government is able to mobilize revenue to perform their functions, you are going to have a system whereby some level of government in desperate need of revenue will go about it in a wrong way. Property tax is a matter for the local government. But there are practical problems relating to local government leveraging that tax. So some states have come in, but the issue is whether the state intervention is sustainable. Because if property tax works, we should see development across Nigeria. We should see it in our various villages. And we have to make a conscious decision whether we want a government at that level or we want administrative units. What I propose in all my advocacy is let us strengthen the local government, strengthen the state government, and also strengthen the federal so that they could be service delivery centers and they could do excellently the responsibility assigned to them. A situation where one level grabs all the power, leaving the other levels in a very poor state will not deliver. It's like a head of a home who gets all the money and then do whatever he likes with it, neglecting the household and the children. So we must have a holistic approach, and it exists. It's already in the various recommendations. Let us have a system whereby something comes directly to each level so that all this irresponsible fiscal behavior, especially at the local government and at the state, will stop.
All right.
And until we have that conversation, we will not be able to address this problem. It's good we have executive orders, but they are short interim measures. And I hope those who are driving this reform will be fast-sighted and then look beyond the immediate problems.
Okay. Prof, let me just take this to Benga Adebayo. When you talked about the level, you talked about 39 other taxes that the telecom industry has to deal with going forward, and this is transferred more or less to the consumers. With this order, yes, you guys are excited, but you're looking at how to break it all down. But what structure is there in the telecom industry? I mean, Prof talked about having a structure that can work, a working structure that will ensure that these things are seen through and not haphazardly. But is there a structure in the telecom industry that can help to reduce the taxes as they are and so reduce the weight on the consumers at the end of the day?
Yes, we do have structures. Issues of defined taxes that are clearly listed in the Constitution and the regulations are not the problem. The problems are those definitions that are not under any tax header, such as effluent discharge levy, right-of-way renewal levy, environmental sanitation levy, diesel storage levy, and a number of them that have no relationship or bearing to telecom services at all, which in most cases are enforced at state levels and at local government level. And like Prof said, the behavior of local government tax collectors, you can only imagine it, completely at variance with the will of progress. You have cases where local government tax collectors will go to lock up telephone sites. They will go to telecom offices, seize their tools, arrest the staff, harass them, intimidate them in the name of collection of taxes and levies. And at the end of the day, it just makes operations very difficult. So the problem is not in the taxes and levies that are clearly defined and are listed either in our licenses or in the regulation or in the laws of the federation. The taxes are the problem are those ones that state often has to generate in the name of IGR. And I think that more than that, we are saying government should look at telecom sector as the national economic support infrastructure and provide us with the required requirement in terms of critical national infrastructure protection and isolate us from some of these unacceptable behavior of tax collectors at state and local government levels. We have cases where you bring an approval from the federal government, a state governor says to you, I don't report to Abuja, that's an Abuja approval, it's not applicable in my state. And it's in very many respects. So our issue is not an issue of taxes that are clearly listed and defined. There are a number of them that are called at federal level that the state will insist again that they must have the same levy or the same tax on us. For example, environmental impact assessment. A telecom site is a telecom site. It's domiciled at a particular location. The rule and the law says that Federal Ministry of Environment will be responsible for reasons of environmental impact assessment on telecom site. So we will do EIA assessment with the Federal Ministry of Environment. The State Ministry of Environment will come against us. The local government Ministry of Environment will come against us on the same site, in the same location. So how do you explain that? So these are the similar kind of problems that we face at different states, and that makes just operations extremely difficult and makes the cost of service provision very, very high. So we do have structures to pay and to collect, but the reality of the matter is that those that are not well defined, that are arbitrary in nature, are the problematic ones, and that makes the majority in the number.
Well, Prof, let me ask you, Prof. These taxes come with different names sometimes. Levies, duties, licenses, taxes, the others. You teach taxation for a living. But then the investors, such as Mr. Adebayo, who just spoke now, have their own issues and perspectives to all of these things. The states have their own way of doing things. The federal government have their own way of doing things. And the local governments, in some cases, have their ways of doing things. There was a day we were speaking with an individual who said, look, between somewhere in the north and south here, truckers have to pay something in the region of 200 levies. There was a video that made the rounds last year of someone just opening one page upon the other, and the taxes usually come with, of course, receipts in heaps. So this order of the federal government, this executive order of the federal government, how do you see it percolating all across board to the local governments, the state governments as well, so that while the federal government is saving the investors from one end, they are not being locked down by on another end? Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a big relief, which must be complemented with some other rapid actions. Because in a federal system, each level of government to a large extent can exercise sovereign powers within its territory. And if we go that route, the problem will be exacerbated. The problem will worsen. So there must be cooperation between all levels of government. State government must recognize the need for the local government to have sufficient revenue and then agree on what those revenue will be. So all the charges masquerading as levies, they are more or less taxes because there is disproportionality in the level of services being provided and what government is asking for. So you have a system whereby this level of governments are indirectly trying to exert their fiscal power and also get their pound of flesh from businesses. And it's unfortunate, the soft targets are always businesses. And once they distrain a business, there is nothing that business can do until it pays, either wholly or partly. And this is part of the malady in the system. So that is why we must go beyond the current gain.
But Prof, the question will be how? I know that we have a National Executive Council, which the Vice President heads, and from time to time they sit down with governors to talk about these things. So one wonders how that will happen. The previous federal government and the chairman of that committee under which was the former Vice President Osinbajo, championed an ease of doing business program with the PEBEC for quite some time. But it seems that the ease of doing business thing just happened within the pocket of states, and it wasn't quite received or embraced by everyone. But so the question then is, how? Do we really need an order to champion the cause of Nigeria through the states?
Well, you have to recognize that states have important roles to play. So the way this can actually work is to have leadership at the federal level and at the state level. The president has said something specifically about tax reform. Let the state also do the same. Let the local government also do the same. References were made to the national tax policy, and that policy document says reform the system. You reform the system by, first of all, establishing a study group. This is a technical aspect, a technical subject. Put a body of experts together and look at the system and then define the terms of reference that they will look at and come with recommendation. So in the areas where we have made quantum leap in our tax system, they were preceded by study. I've not seen any systemic study in the last 15 years. All the Finance Act that we have been having, and we've been making a movement forward and then 2 steps backward. So we need to have an organized study group with a realistic time frame that will come with recommendation. If you look at the activities of the last administration, the presidency was concerned that intervention...
Strange, it's alien. We offer social services. We don't deliver hardware. We don't trade in hardware. We don't do importation. It's a service that supports the life of people. We think that government should not tax subscribers to the bones, and therefore this should be completely abolished. For the sake of the digital economy, which Mr. President has also spoken about, for the sake of the progress of the industry and stability of the operating environment that we have, we think that the 5% excise tax should be completely eliminated from telecom services. That's our position.
Yeah, Ayo has some questions.
Well, still with you, Mr. Adebayo, Dr. Oyedele had said something as well that, look, this thing may just come back. He said, in response to this order of the president, there could be a possible lifting of the suspension of the tax in the near future, especially if some of the low revenue yielding multiple taxes payable by operators in the sector are repealed. How do you respond to that?
Well, if they bring it back in the future, we're going to pass it on to the subscribers. It's as easy as that. We are just to act as collection agents. We'll collect on behalf of government and remit to government. So as I said earlier in the beginning of this interview, the burden of collection will be on us as network operators, but the weight of the tax itself will be on the Nigerian public and the subscriber. And I don't think that the government wants to inflict more tax burden on Nigerians.
Okay. Well, Prof, so here we are in all of these, and you have talked repeatedly about the need to re-engineer the laws and all of those. I have taken a look at the 1998 tax and levies approved list for collection, decree of 1998. I don't know, let me believe that you would help us know how it has been adjusted to become a law as opposed to a decree. And quite a number of very, very interesting laws right there listed, including cattle tax. And a number of others like that, that so many people will be wondering, they didn't even know such things existed. About tax education, do you think we have it? in that same vein, speak to the micro, small, and medium enterprises, whether or not they're even aware of the taxes they're supposed to pay. Taxes, levies, charges, duties, whatever it is, by whichever name they come. Tax education.
Cattle tax, to my knowledge, does not exist anywhere in Nigeria. It used to be the backbone of the economy of the North because the owners of cattle were like the high net worth in those days. And what that speaks to the essence of taxation. You go after those who have more. But what we have in Nigeria, unfortunately, is the reverse. So the decree, which is now an act, Cap T2, LFN 2004, was an intervention or initiative to arrest double taxation in Nigeria. It was an initiative of JTB. But unfortunately, it has had partial success. So in 2015, the Federal Minister of Finance actually wanted to do something about it and did something. But rather than reducing the number of taxes and levies, the number grew. And part of the issues that Mr. Adebayo spoke to came directly from that modification order. As a matter of fact, the modification order of 2015 became such a big problem that it was challenged in court, the Federal High Court of Lagos, by the hospitality sector. And Faji J, in a well-considered judgment, declared the modification order null and void. So we have had intervention, but if they are ad hoc and they are not well thought out, they are not going to deliver. If you see this as a crisis situation, you must actually address it from the bottom, from the roots, not in an ad hoc manner and then impulsive responses. I'm sure the drivers of the Finance Act didn't think through this, because how, for God's sake, will you be bringing holistic reform into sectors as important as manufacturing and all that, and they will have no clue about the emergence of that policy? Is that bad? By the time government listen to them, know their concern, I think some of these issues will be appropriately addressed. But then final thing, the service tax, the new service tax is not on telecom alone. Telecom was just emphasized, it's on all services. And to me, that is double taxation. It's like trying to introduce an increment of VAT through excise tax. Excise tax is on locally produced goods. That is the meaning of excise in Nigeria. So government should forget totally about the idea of increasing VAT through excise tax. If you want to increase VAT to whatever rate, let us discuss. Let us run the number. Let us see the effect it's going to have on the economy and the common man through proper study. Then we know what to do about it. So it's not just about telecom. And that is very worrisome to me.
All right, we'll have to thank both of you for coming on. Abiola Sani is a senior advocate of Nigeria and the professor of commercial law, University of Lagos. We've also had Mr. Gbenga Adebayo, chairman, Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria, Alton. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.